And?
And civil radio. So we are
both.
collaborating. Okay. So whatever we are recording will actually be broadcast.
You asked the question, I try to answer. What to do? Where?
Okay, perhaps sitting and then.
Okay, whatever. Take another shot.
Hello. I'm Mark. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Yes, so my name is Cynthia, and this is for the radio.
Yeah.
So here we are at the EZAZANAP event with Ulrich Barzani. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Barzani.
And this is an interesting name because you were born in Essen, in Germany. So how come you have this non-German sounding name?
Well, my grandparents from my father's side came from the Polish background, Eastern Prussian Polish area, so that the name seems to be Polish by the roots.
You are a Protestant Lutheran church. You are a Protestant Lutheran pastor, if I'm not mistaken. I was looking for information on how you first got to know the Lord, but I couldn't find any. So can you tell us a little bit about how you yourself got saved?
Well, I'm grateful for what I experienced in my family, because my parents have been committed Christians in difficult times. Both of them were young people in the Nazi time, and they were members of what they called that time the Confessing Church, who were anti-Nazi, and the pastor, who was very influential as a youth pastor in my life, went into prison several times because he was opposing the Nazi system. And but nevertheless, a Christian family is one thing, but you have to make your own decision. And when I became a teenager, 14 years, I wasn't not a very deep thinking philosopher, but these identity crises which you go through, who am I? Am I only the product of the education of my parents or not? So in that area, in that time, I was invited by a youth outreach program in the city of Essen industrial area, which was really tough, and focusing on boys only, where there was tough ways of doing sports, soccer and boxing. A lot of boxing was there, and but at the same time, the same people, volunteers, not professionals, volunteers, committed young Christians, communicated the gospel of Jesus to us, and they challenged us not only to learn how to box, do the boxing correctly and effectively, but also to they confronted us with the message of Jesus and really invited us to turn around. I was really told by them, it's not just a matter of process. You have to make a decision to break with your life and to get clear about whether you want or not to follow Jesus or not. Learn about him, study the New Testament to be able to do a decision. And of course, these kind of challenge was very helpful, and there were some events which led to a decision that I started to follow Jesus, and I never regretted it.
And how old were you at the time?
Well, the beginning was when I was 14, and of course then afterwards you go through different growth, also crises, of course. In the beginning it was an experience, let's say an experience of friendship. But friendship is, well, you choose friends and you may leave them again. Later on, I had a deeper understanding of that God is alive, and that if He is the Creator, that really my life should be in harmony with Him. And I felt I was completely on the wrong direction. So an understanding of God's holiness and what is the will of God and what is sin, what is wrong, right, came later when I was 16, 17 years. And then of course when I was a university student, I went through a lot of intellectual crisis. I was confronted with all the kind of psychological critique, and that of course, looking back on that, of course, I consider it to be really helpful. You go into a crisis, you will break, or you will be stronger afterwards, and so I will never, but I won't miss it when I had also difficult experiences.
When did you become such a devoted Christian that you felt a call for a mission?
And that was from the very beginning. It was interesting. The youth program I got in contact with, they involved me immediately when I decided to follow Jesus and say, well, join us and help us reaching out for other boys. And I was aware I wouldn't have listened to a pastor at that time, because I had such bad experience with this boring kind of people. So, but my own experience was that because there were young men of 16, 17, 18 who built the bridge for me, so I understood immediately that it was helpful that I myself should invest me into this kind of outreach programs. And by that I learned from the very beginning, if you are a Christian and you receive the gift of love of God, you are not the final consumer of it. You got it to share it with others, however you can do it. And that, of course, was the driving perspective all my life. There came you must not become a full-time worker because of that, or a pastor or theologian. First I thought I should become an engineer, because this is the field where I have a much wider field of contacts with non-Christians in everyday's life. But then I had some special experiences that showed me that my call is for full-time work in the church, and of course I never regret this as well.
What were the milestones in your life? So looking back, what would you say were the most important events for you, either on a personal front or on a professional front?
Well, at the beginning, this decision, of course, was one of the basic things, and also the decision whether or not I should be full-time worker in the church or in a Christian organization. That was a struggle, and it was not easy, but I wouldn't have done it without knowing it's my place. So then, of course, I wasn't quite sure whether I should marry a wife or not, because I thought if I'm going to work with the people, I have to work to have time when they are free. Can you have a family if you are on Sundays and evenings always away? And a student at the University of Göttingen, I fell in love with a wonderful girl. We cooperated in a Christian student program, and then I fell in love with her. And then I said, well, what now? And in fact, I asked her before kissing her, I asked her whether she could imagine to be married to a man who may not be at home on Sundays. And most of the evenings he wouldn't be at home.
What did she say?
She said, I can. And quite often in our life, after being married now 46 years, we said that we are really happily married. But it became true. I was a youth pastor, and the program was every Sunday, morning and afternoon. So I came back in the evening. So we had to organize. There were other chances for us, of course, during the week. But I wouldn't have done my ministry without my wife. it was our joint calling, her and mine.
So did she find a place apart from you or supporting you in ministry? So did she have her special place in ministry?
She is a teacher by profession, and but when we married, she left it. I'm not quite sure whether this will fit into our times today, but in that time we said, well, one salary supports both of us. We don't need that much, and I was very grateful to her that I never counseled women. So if the person I was doing preaching ministry, and if I was asked, I always said, well, I can't help you and I will not, please, if you are ready, want to, you may talk to my wife. And she is an expert since she came to the Lord Jesus as a student, and she was learning, is brilliant, gifted in doing student groups, conversation talks, Bible study groups, even also talking with non-Christians and so on. And she continued doing that through all the years until today. All volunteer work, never professionally paid for. During the last 20 years, she was coordinating and heading the women's breakfast meetings, which is a very strong evangelistic program in many German and Swiss cities. And so we have 3 children now, of course, grown up, and we are grateful that meeting her was, of course, a decisive moment. Then, of course, I was sent to the Near East, to Jerusalem, and had an encounter as a young pastor, assistant pastor, vicar, we call it in German, curate. I worked in the Arab world among Muslims, the German church in Jerusalem, and Bejala, and Bethlehem, and Ramallah, Amman. And that was a tremendous experience for me, and which I that provided a knowledge which I later on in Europe, when Islam came to the part of the world, really found very useful.
Do you also have grandchildren? Because you mentioned you
Yes,
have 3 children. Any grandchildren so far?
Yes, we have. So far we have 5. And the 3 of the children of my daughter, they are 20, 18, and 16 years already. So, and
congratulations!
The younger son has 2 girls. They are, I'm always to think they are 8 and 5. So we enjoy it.
Yeah, so your family is getting bigger and bigger. But I must say that perhaps we can say when people mention your name, most people associate your name with the pro-Christ movement. How did that that movement originate in your life? How did it start?
Well, I did all my life as a pastor. I was invited to do, let's say, evangelistic preaching weeks, campaigns, under different titles, different names, open evenings or whatever, Lord's parties, Lord's days, and whatever names people created to do it. It was but only in the beginning of the 90s when we invited Billy Graham to Germany after reunification of Germany. We wanted to have an outreach to cover the whole of the country, and we invited him and recreated the term pro-Christ for that type of meeting. And then, of course, his team had made experiences with the satellite networking, which was new at that time. It has never done in the US but it was experienced in England and Scotland, and we tried it at that time in Germany.
Because we're talking about 1991.
Well, the event took place in 1993, but the planning started in 91. So, it was supposed to be one event and then finished. But the response to the networking approach was very strong, so the local pastors really forced us to continue. But at first we didn't really believe in it, because Billy Graham is a public figure and a media person, and you create a lot of attraction if you have a preacher like that. And they asked me to do the preaching, but I'm compared to Billy Graham, I'm a nobody. So, but we tried to do it and work much more than on creating public awareness through the media. We encouraged the local churches and Christians build on personal invitation. If you want to have seekers and people who are not yet believing Christians, you have to build bridges of personal relationship and trust to invite them into the meetings. Otherwise it won't work. And it worked, and so we continued the ministry of evangelistic campaigns under the title of Pro Christ, using also this satellite system, and nowadays today, of course, the internet live stream, it has become very strong, and recently our meetings have gone live on TV as well, which is a new development now. But it was through 8 times we did it in this Europe-wide way since the beginning of the 90s until beginning of this year. And it will continue somehow with younger evangelists, of course. And I am part of that on the local level, regional level as well.
You have written 19 books so far, if I'm not mistaken. How did you first start writing, and why?
I haven't counted these books. I admire that you did. Now, yeah, I started writing. I was forced to write little flyers in that youth outreach program in the city of Essen, where we did house-to-house visits to the boys each Sunday to invite them to the programs. And we didn't want to invite them only, but also to communicate the message of Jesus somehow. But these type of kids and young people do not read very much. So they forced me to write small text, challenging, provoking, but not too much. And so I tried my best. I never believed in my ability to do some writing. And it worked. And at the end, of course, after a couple of years, we produced the first book of that. Though the first book I was writing on Jesus in the Bible and in the Quran when I came back from the Middle East. But this was a little book which had, 5,000 copies or that. But the other one, then, we put these leaflets together, flyers together, and a cartoonist drew some cartoons. And then, of course, I was ashamed. This little book went up, you see, and was a book written for analphabetic people who do not read, you see. It's a shame, but nevertheless. And then, of course, publishing houses just ask, do it and do it again, and so they keep you on writing.
And now, if I'm not mistaken, you are retired. You're a pensioner.
Yeah.
How do you spend an average day of yours these days?
Well, there is no regular average day, you see. the only difference is that I get a little bit less money from a different source now, as a pension as retired. But the program is so. I used to have the leadership administration of the General Secretary of the YMCA, which in Germany, which is quite a big organization. And I had to do a lot besides preaching the gospel and doing that, a lot of management tasks. And then, of course, afterwards, I concentrate much more on the preaching the gospel, on writing books, on and I could. But the amount of work was not less than before. It was only different. So I just, as long as I'm alive and fresh in my body and my mind, I want to continue. And as long as people, I respond only to invitations. You see, if you don't get the invitation, you can stay at home and to look after the garden.
One last
Now for your
question.
last question. Yes,
Okay.
I was going to say.
Yes. One last question. What would be your message to the Hungarians, especially to the listeners of Calvary Chapel Radio?
Well, as far as I understand by reading the papers and so on, I'm speaking to friends from Hungary. This country is facing tremendous challenges economically, and so also the people have to struggle, and I feel that the Christians have a special task in our days, and you in your country as well, to give hope. There is no deeper and stronger resource of hope than in Jesus risen from the dead, you see. If you really get to know him and he is transforming your life, then you can do what Paul says, be steadfast and increase and grow in what you do for the Lord, because you know whatever you do with him and for him is not in vain. And I think we all need today, in difficult times, these energy of hope, which will not be destroyed. So this is not only for Hungary, but this is for all Europe in every part and the rest of the world as well. The best we can give them.
We wish you the very same. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
talking with us.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, that was
So